and can share with us what the next step forward is to be. So I would like to introduce to you Georgia's pro-life fighter of all times are this precious couple, Nathaniel and Abigail Darnell. And Abigail Parkrun, and her mom and dad are here, and some of her sisters and brothers are here tonight. And so we've had the pleasure of knowing Abigail and her family for many, many years. But now we get to know you in a new capacity. And you've got a baby, that precious baby girl's a year old now, isn't she?
We're the ones responsible for the child making all the noise.
But we thank y'all for being here, and we want to know what is ongoing and what is going to be ahead of us as this battle continues, because we've got to fight for life for those precious babies. And so thank y'all for being with us tonight.
Yes, well, thank you,
And give the floor to you.
Appreciate it. So we've put together a little bit of a slideshow that you'll be able to see up on the screen in the corner there. Again, thank you, Ms. Diane Putnam, for having us, and for everyone here at the Whitfield County GOP. Y'all always put on great events, and Diane Putnam is the hostess with the mostest when it comes to GOP events, it seems like. But we are really honored to be here, not only because I love Whitfield County. It's named after evangelist George Whitfield, and one of the greatest men in our history, who actually started an orphanage many years ago. But also there's so many wonderful people in Whitfield, and I discovered that very personally when I met my wife, Abigail, and got to marry a local person here. I'm from Cobb County originally. My name is Nathaniel Darnell. Darnell, not Parnell. I told Brother Mac, I appreciate his message, that if he changed the first letter of his last name, he'd come to all the family reunions. We'd love to have him. He did a great job in his presentation. And we also appreciate a lot of things about the Faith and Freedom Coalition. In fact, they are continuing the legacy that Christian Coalition had been carrying before them, and before them, Moral Majority with Jerry Falwell. Jerry Falwell actually officiated the wedding for my parents back in 1980. They were right in the middle of all of that in Virginia back in the day. And we're really grateful for the legacy of these ministries, because one thing that they have promoted all throughout the decades that I have often seen attacked is the idea that Christians should be involved in politics. There's a lie that's being told that Christians should have nothing to do with politics. We should keep all that inside the church building, and the Bible should have nothing to do with the civil government. And we need Christians to be in politics. If we don't let the light and the salt that the Lord's blessed us with be able to penetrate our culture around us, it's only going to continue to decay and get worse. And I think we're seeing that in a large measure as we've seen how Christians have become very silent in our culture. Things have gotten worse. We are seeing some huge problems. And of course, abortion is one of the big problems that we've been fighting against now for decades. And we're so grateful to be able to talk a little bit about this subject with you today, especially after 49 years of waiting for this huge outcome. We've never expected it. I didn't expect it in my lifetime. And so what a blessing that God providentially brought that about. So if you could advance, Jason, that next slide there. Abby and I are kind of speaking on behalf of two organizations that have partnered together. So I am the NFOA director for the Georgia Republican Assembly. And my wife, Abigail, is on the board for the GRA as our third vice president, but she's also on the board for Georgia Right to Life as their first vice president. And so when the Roe v. Wade decision was overturned through the Dobbs case, the GRA wanted to partner with Georgia Right to Life in this big Georgians Ending Abortion project that they are kind of spearheading. And it's being a partnership not just between these two organizations, but many other groups, including the Whitfield County GOP. They've jumped onto the bandwagon. They're a part of that. We've got other GOP county organizations such as Banks County, Catoosa County, Chattooga County, several from here in the 14th District, and many other counties around the state. So it's really great that we're going to partner together and work together on this great project. You can learn a little bit about the GRA at georgiara.com. I'll just tell you real briefly, as you can see on the banner here, that the GRA is known as the conscience of the Republican Party, because the GRA is seeking to encourage the Republicans who are elected, or Republican Party organizational leaders, to actually stand for the principles that they profess. We believe that those principles are largely based on the Bible. They're biblical principles. They're American principles. If you look back at our history, they are uniquely American principles. and they are for the health and well-being of our nation. So why would we not promote them? But a lot of times we have Republicans that say one thing and they do another. And we have a lot of organizations down at the Capitol who claim to be all about conservative values, but what they often end up doing is they end up providing a mask for the Republicans to make them look good to the people back home, when in fact, if you look at their voting record does not line up with the talking points that they give out on the stumping trail, and certainly doesn't line up with the political platform. So if you would like to be a part of the Republican Assembly, I know we have several Republican Assembly members here in the room tonight, but if you'd like to join us, one of the things that we can do that the party organization can't do is we can actually take sides in contested primaries. We endorse contestants, different officials in contested primaries. For example, we endorsed Mitchell Horner, who recently won his primary for State House. We also endorsed State Senator-elect Colton Moore before he won his. We've got some other big races that are coming up that we've endorsed and that have a really good shot at winning around the state. But that's one of the wonderful things we get to do at the GRA. And when we have another great event coming up, and this kind of relates to the Supreme Court, we are going to be having a really special guest speaker at the Cobb County GOP headquarters on August the 18th. The Alabama State Supreme Court Justice Tom Parker is sending his personal chief of staff, Attorney Ben Dupree, to give a presentation not just about the Dobbs case, but about all of the recent decisions, because it was really a series of remarkable decisions that overturned terrible precedent, not just for abortion, but also for religious freedom. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Lemon Test when it comes to, a lot of the reasons why prayer has not been allowed in schools, and Bible reading, and why the Ten Commandments displays are not allowed in public places. There were some awful precedent that got overturned recently, and the Dobbs case kind of got all the attention, and people don't realize just how vast the ramifications are by the recent case on religious freedom. They have no idea just how vast the ramifications are on gun laws, gun freedom, other things in terms of curbing the bureaucracy with the EPA and school choice, huge ramifications. So Ben's going to give a great summary, and he's going to distill for those of us who are not attorneys, the implications of what this means and what's likely going to come forward next. So if you'd like to be a part of that, we'd love to have you. That's Thursday night, August the 18th. It's going to be a great event, and all the money that we raise from that event is going to help us get some of our endorsed candidates elected in November. So we'd love to have you come for that. So again, my name is Nathaniel, and my wife Abigail Darnell is going to be talking on behalf of Georgia Right to Life, delving a little bit more deeply in what do we do now as a result of this big decision with Dobbs. It's a wonderful, exciting event, but like Ms. Putnam said, the fight is not over. Winston Churchill made that great quote, at the end of a pivotal battle in World War II, where he said,
"This is not the beginning of the end, but it might be
the end of the beginning." Right, and so we've got our work still cut out for us. I know we've been waiting 49 years just to get this far, but we don't want to rest on our laurels and think that the job is even half over. So tell us a little bit about GRA.
Georgia Right to Life is a Christian ministry that is committed to advancing the sanctity of life and establishing personhood, which is the cultural and legal recognition of the right to life for all persons. Personhood says that if you're a person, you can't be murdered. Mm-hmm. And we actually have a chapter of Georgia Right to Life right here in Northwest Georgia, and we have the chapter leader here with us tonight, Keith Cochran. You'll wave. And he's also my dad, but the Northwest chapter has been really focused on changing public opinion for many years and on education here in the Northwest Georgia community. Their most recent effort was to launch a petition and a letter to the local pharmacies up here. Did you know that even though there's no abortion facility in Whitfield County, did you know there are several pharmacies that carry abortifacients, such as the Plan B morning after pill, which is labeled a contraceptive, but its primary function is to kill an innocent human being in the very, very earliest stages. So they've been launching this letter to the local pharmacists, just urging them as a citizen, please take this off your shelves. And so ever since Roe was overturned, they kind of started helping out with a statewide effort, which we're about to tell you about. But that's an effort that right here in Whitfield County, you guys can advance the sanctity of life right here and save lives in Whitfield County. Mm-hmm. So they'll probably be getting back to that and resuming that here after a while. But, so the effort we want to tell you about tonight is an effort that we launched called Georgians Ending Abortion. It's a coalition, as he said, of other organizations, pro-life organizations, GOP organizations. Ms. Diane in the Whitfield County has partnered with us in that effort. And we are petitioning Governor Brian Kemp to convene a special legislative session to abolish abortion with a personhood amendment. So we know that thousands of preborn children are going to be killed between now and January. And the next legislative session, as you all probably know, is January to about April every year. But we know thousands are going to die, and so this issue is urgent. If you could advance to the next slide. Governor Kemp has the authority to call a special session, but also 2/3 of the legislators could do that. And so we're also looking for legislators. We have multiple legislators who have partnered with us. You can see their names on the website, the grtlpetitions.online website. And we're looking for more legislators. I would love to see Chuck Payne and Casey Carpenter and Steve Tarvin and all of the ones up here sign on to that with us. So why a special session? Well, because of the urgency of this issue, the life and death nature of the issue. Also, because we currently have a Republican trifecta. And this is something a lot of people don't talk about often, but did you know that Republicans control the state house, the state senate, and the governor's office right now? And we don't know if they will control it in 2023. So now's the time to take bold, decisive action on behalf of the preborn. And another reason is that it could really energize the pro-life base. All those voters you're talking about, trying to bring them out in November, what if we could actually end abortion completely in Georgia? You think that would energize voters?
Yes.
Absolutely. Make that door knocking a lot easier because they'd be excited about what the Republican Party is doing and want to come out and vote.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but when I see Republicans do what they say they believe, it motivates me to want to go out and support them again. When I see Republicans don't do what they say they believe, I am demotivated from wanting to go out and, phone call and door knock for them.
Yeah.
So here's a visual of how we are currently set up in the state Senate and the state House.
And the rhinos would like you to believe that, well, it's all those Democrats. We just can't do that. We just can't do a special session. We can't get anything passed because of, all those Democrats. But if you look at the numbers, all it would take was for the Republicans in the state House, the state Senate, and the governor to agree, and bam, we could advance Republican principles here in the state of Georgia because we have a Republican trifecta. So what about the current laws today? So as many of y'all know, our heartbeat law went into effect after being held up in the courts for nearly 4 years. We were very excited to see that go into effect.
Yeah, there's some great things about the heartbeat bill. We're going to probably point out some of the weaknesses here, but we do want to highlight there are some things that we're excited about, and we are grateful that this has the potential of saving some lives. It's a little bit hard to quantify exactly what that impact will be, but one of the great features we like about the heartbeat bill is that it has, for the first time, tax credits for babies that are in the womb, and the responsibility of fathers of babies to pay child support while the baby is in the womb. So it's putting responsibility not just on the mother, that's they always say that we're just burdening mothers, but we also want fathers to be responsible for that little life that's growing inside that womb. Yeah, and that's a great feature, for sure.
Yeah. So, but some of the deficiencies are these. So there's no protection for babies prior to 6 weeks. It's still open season on babies in Georgia prior to 6 weeks. Now, after 6 weeks, this law is supposed to protect babies. In the title, that's what you would think, right? Because if they can detect a heartbeat, which, by the way, a baby doesn't have a heartbeat starting at 6 weeks, it's much earlier, like 21 days. However, at 6 weeks is when it's usually more detectable and easy to hear for a doctor. But this bill currently doesn't provide any protection for babies conceived in rape and incest, and thereby sets up a double standard of justice, right? So if you have a beating heart, then the doctor can't murder you. But if you were conceived in rape and incest and you have a beating heart, they can still kill you. So it's two different standards of justice that are at play right now for preborn children in the womb. So next also, another exception, if there's no protection for babies who are suspected of having a fetal abnormality. So you go into your appointment, the doctor says, well, we think your baby might have Down syndrome. We think your baby might have, some sort of chromosomal abnormality. And then you're free to get an abortion for like months, all the way up through like 20 weeks of the pregnancy, like you know, like halfway or even more. If your baby is sick and has an abnormality like that.
And sometimes doctors are wrong. We've met people who have said that the doctor said your baby has an abnormality, and the baby was born perfectly fine later.
And we believe these exceptions are discriminatory, similar to if you had a pro-life law that said we are going to protect white babies, but black babies can still be killed. Would that be wrong?
Yeah.
Right? That's not equal justice.
Right. It's eugenics language is what it is. It's saying some people have a higher quality of life than others, and it is eugenics language. That's the reason though it's alarming.
Yeah, so since the heartbeat bill went into effect, I've been talking to some of the pro-life activists I know who frequently, like on an almost daily basis, stand outside these abortion facilities and just peacefully protest and pray and try to minister to the women. And I've been trying to get some data from them. What are they seeing now? So I've talked to some in the different cities. You know, we have abortion facilities in Atlanta, Columbus, Savannah, Augusta, most of the major cities. And this is what I'm hearing. One of them told me that they saw abortion numbers go from about 30 a day to about 12 a day. And I think that's really great. Praise God. Like, we're not there completely, but that's a huge difference. That was in Augusta. But the guy I talked to in Atlanta said he has seen about the same number of cars pulling in, about the same number of women walking into the clinics. The lady I talked to in Columbus, Georgia, she operates a pregnancy center right beside an abortion facility, very strategically located. And they have people on the sidewalks every single day, and they keep good records, and she's got spreadsheets. And she sent it to me, and she said they have seen, and you'll be shocked, they have seen their abortion numbers in Columbus triple since Roe was overturned and since the heartbeat bill went into effect. A significant spike, and I can show you this spreadsheet if you're interested.
So people are crossing over state lines from Alabama to Georgia to get their abortions because it's actually harder to get an abortion right now in Alabama than it is in Georgia, even with the heartbeat bills in force. So
yeah, so they're seeing license plates from like Alabama and Texas and Louisiana at the Columbus abortion facility. The picture you see there is the Feminist Women's Health Center in Atlanta. But the other thing, and this may explain what we're seeing in Columbus, the heartbeat bill, if you'll advance to the next slide, has this huge loophole. And this loophole says that the abortionist is the determiner of whether the baby has a heartbeat or not, despite the fact that the abortionist has a monetary interest in killing the baby. Like, talk about the fox guarding the hen house, right? And if you'll advance to the next slide there, this is the passage of it right there. It's lines 250 to 254 of HB 481, the Life Act. You can read it right there. It's the physician performing the procedure makes the determination of a detectable heartbeat. And how are you ever going to catch that, right? He says, well, didn't hear a heartbeat, so we'll just go right ahead.
conflict of interest, maybe.
So it's because of these deficiencies that it is vital that we go farther than the heartbeat bill. We can't just sit back and rejoice and say this was great, it was a great incremental step. We also have to push forward.
No.
So what is the goal? What is the main end goal that would fix this? I believe the ideal end goal is a society where civil government is doing justice, the jurisdiction God assigned to them, Romans 13, they bear the sword, and then we, the citizens, families, churches, pregnancy centers are doing acts of mercy and charity in the community. And y'all are really blessed here in Whitfield County to have the Women's Enrichment Center and other such centers that have been faithfully serving women, mothers, and their babies for years now. So the goal that we are working toward is a personhood amendment to the state constitution. Georgia Right to Life believes that the main objective must be personhood, and it hits at the very heart of the issue, which is that if you're a person, you can't be murdered. In the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision, Justice Harry Blackmun said, quote, "If this suggestion of personhood is established, the appellant's case, of course, collapses, for the fetus's right to life would then be guaranteed specifically by the amendment." What he's saying is, our Constitution says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Right. And so if you can establish the personhood of the preborn, bam, the 5th and 14th Amendment kick in, and they're treated with the same legal protection as you and I.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. So,
Yeah, so personhood is a key element of all of this. Are we, is there a future slide about the personhood in the?
Go back just one real quick.
Okay.
Really quickly. So a personhood amendment would be a lot stronger and more permanent than just a law like the heartbeat bill.
Right.
And it would not be subject to all the legal challenges. Many of you are probably aware that the heartbeat law just this week was challenged in court again in Fulton County, of all places. And they're challenging it because we suspect that the pro-abort side wants to take it to the Georgia Supreme Court and find a right to abortion in the Georgia Constitution, right? The Supreme Court said there's no right to abortion in the federal Constitution, overturned Roe v. Wade, and now they're trying to say, well, it's probably in the Georgia Constitution, in the penumbras and emanations.
Right.
Reading between the lines.
Because that's what they did in Kansas. If you guys were paying attention to closely what happened in Kansas recently, there's nothing in the Kansas state constitution that actually says that there's a right to an abortion. If you read the passage that the state Supreme Court of Kansas quotes or cites for their decision, it's a passage that basically reads like the Declaration of Independence, where it says, you know, we believe in the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And somehow, in that phraseology, they derive a right to an abortion, which is a passage that actually says people have a right to life. So how do you get a passage that says right to life to say you can abort, if you have the right to murder? That's exactly what they did in Kansas, and they're hoping, the left is hoping that they can get the state Supreme Court here in Georgia to do something similar. That's why they're fighting this issue in Fulton courts.
So that is another reason we need to amend our state constitution to explicitly say life begins at fertilization through natural death, and not just pass a law that can be caught up in the courts and for forever. We want it in the Constitution so it's firm and permanent.
And by the way, the Georgia Republican Party platform currently states that we have a duty as Republicans to defend life. And it says also that life begins at conception, which starts at fertilization. It actually uses that language. So when we ask Republicans to support this idea, we're simply asking them to support what the party platform already specifies.
Mm-hmm. The platform doesn't say life begins at heartbeat, it says life begins at fertilization.
Right.
If you will, hold on really quickly. One other benefit of a personhood amendment, have y'all heard about the district attorneys who are all saying, we're just not going to enforce the heartbeat bill in like Metro Atlanta? Have y'all read about that?
Yeah.
District attorneys saying just, I don't like that law, so I'm just not going to enforce it.
Right.
If we had a personhood amendment, if that happened, then the father or the aunt or uncle of the murdered baby could at least sue in civil court for wrongful death.
Right.
If you recognize the personhood of the preborn in the Constitution, it wouldn't just be up to the district attorneys to enforce it.
Right.
You and I, or the family of the aborted baby, could sue for the wrongful death.
Right. Kind of similar to what you've heard about in Texas. Yeah.
So the challenge that's facing us with a personhood amendment is that it requires more than just a simple majority. It requires a 2/3 vote in both the Georgia House and Senate, and then it would have to be ratified by us, the voters. So it would be on the ballot, kind of like what we saw in Kansas, and you would have to go in, and we, the people, would have to vote by majority to ratify that. So it's a big deal. It's really hard, but it has all these other advantages, and I think with God's help we could do it.
So what we would have to do, right now we have the votes, we know, to pass a statute along these lines to say life begins at fertilization. But if we want to be able to have a constitutional amendment, we've got to pick up more seats with the GOP, or we'd have to convince some Democrats to vote with us on this pro-life issue.
And when he says we have the votes if the Republicans actually vote according to the Republican Party platform.
Right.
Which is what?
There's 5 Republicans in the state house that did not vote for the heartbeat bill because they thought it was too pro-life, not because they thought it wasn't pro-life enough. And in particular, Sharon Cooper from my neck of the woods in Cobb County said that she wouldn't vote for it unless they put in additional exceptions and watered it down. They watered it down to appease her, and she still didn't vote for it. And so I'm not too happy with some of those Republicans down in Cobb County and other places. But we'd have to put the pressure on people like that to really stand by our platform.
Was one of the 5 from here?
I'd have to go back and look. It's changed a little bit. Yeah. Sharon Cooper really bothers me because she's from my hometown. Yeah. Anyway.
So still advanced.
Yeah.
So another benefit, next one, we already covered that.
I'll also say Sharon Cooper bothers me because, again, there's certain groups that claim to be conservative that went out of their way to say that Sharon Cooper was this great champion for the pro-life cause when she had a primary opponent that actually is a champion for the pro-life cause, and they spent lots of money to promote her when there was a strong pro-life Republican they could have voted for and supported.
Which is one of the things the GRA is trying to do. We're trying to expose the rhinos so
Right.
that you and I know who to vote for, who's the real Republican, who actually believes in life begins at fertilization, versus the rhino who says they're pro-life and then actually votes against the heartbeat bill, opposes anything pro-life,
Right.
and votes like a Democrat.
Right.
So another thing as well, other than abortion, did y'all know that if we could end abortion tomorrow, that wouldn't end the threats to the sanctity of human life? There's these other practices that take place in the laboratory that are actually extremely critical and very threatening to innocent human life that we just don't think about and don't hear about much, such as embryonic stem cell research. This is where they're trying to get stem cells from preborn babies, and the problem is it always kills the tiny baby every single time. They can take stem cells from you or I, and we're fine. But you take stem cells from a tiny baby at that vulnerable stage, and it kills them.
Mm-hmm.
This is a practice that's occurring because there's no legal protection for a human being at its earliest stages. And human embryos are human beings by their genetic makeup, and they're deserving of protection. And we also know that it's just never morally or ethically appropriate to end the life of one human being to benefit another. That's not right. We don't trade lives like that. So that's one of these practices, and a personhood amendment would end that. It would require ethical treatment of preborn children and of embryos. You might say, well, an embryo at that stage doesn't look like a baby, doesn't look like a human being, and I would say you're right. You know, so tiny, and doesn't have the fingers and toes and all the beautiful pictures that we often see of prenatal life. However, that child at that stage looks exactly the way it's supposed to look at that stage of development, and exactly the way you and I looked at 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks after our life came into existence.
Right. In God's design. You know, the reason why we believe that life begins at fertilization is from that moment forward, you have all your unique DNA, and the Lord has charted a course for how your life is going to develop from that moment forward. Everything you need to be a unique person from your mother, your father, exists at that moment of fertilization.
And if we go to the next slide, another challenge that we see is with in vitro fertilization. How many of y'all have ever heard of in vitro fertilization? It's a fertility treatment. So they use it for, women or men who have fertility problems and want to have a baby and can't. And in vitro is simply Latin, and it means in the dish, and fertilization means fertilization. You're creating a new human being in a petri dish in the laboratory. And I know that sounds really weird and really sci-fi, but it happens, and they can do that, and that's amazing. However, the process of in vitro fertilization often requires, or often it happens, that a doctor will implant multiple embryos inside a woman, inside her uterus, in hopes that some of them will actually implant. And then when maybe 5, maybe 6 implant, then they have, that's not safe for a woman to carry 5 or 6. So through a process called selective reduction, they ask the mother, do you want your baby to have blue eyes or brown eyes? And she says, well, blue eyes. And they go in, and through selective reduction, they essentially abort all the other ones except for the blue-eyed baby, or whatever, certain qualities that she was looking for in a child. And I know there's probably a lot of good Christian people that do this, that don't realize what's going on. They get asked these kind of questions, they have no clue. But if we believe life begins at fertilization, and we know God's the creator of life, we know these are living human beings, then it's wrong to intentionally kill them, even if it's in a laboratory, not an abortion facility.
That's right.
And so, while a personhood amendment would not completely outlaw this process, it would require that the preborn children are treated ethically, and they only do things that are in their best interests. So another thing they're doing is like research and cloning, and trying to mix the DNA of a tiny baby with that of a jellyfish to see if they would glow in the dark. With no regard to whether that child would want to glow in the dark for the rest of their entire life.
Oh my word.
But then, But then they just kill them anyway, so they don't actually let them grow up and live a normal life. So they're using these preborn children in the laboratory for research, for cloning and these other things, and then they just kill them. Like, they're literally creating human life to then destroy it. And like, it's no big deal. This is very normative. If you talk to people who are maybe science majors and, you know, biologists. So this is another one of the problems that we're trying to address. And so it's not just abortion, which is why we have to think more broadly. We have to think about human beings and the fact that human beings have rights.
When we talk about this from a legal standpoint, I went to law school, graduated from law school in 2008. I got my Juris Doctorate from Oak Brook College of Law. And in law school, you know, they go into great depth talking about, you know, the development in the common law of homicide law and what are the elements of a homicide or a murder or a manslaughter. And it is interesting listening to the debate today that they want to categorize abortion as if it's fundamentally somehow different from any other type of homicide. But it's exactly the same. It involves killing a human being intentionally. And so if you switch to the next slide, we get some really weird arguments from the left, objections, and sometimes they try to blur the lines on this subject, and they'll say things like, so are you saying that if we have a miscarriage, I can be arrested or investigated under one of these laws you're trying to pass? It's like, well, of course not. In a miscarriage, mother, the doctor, the husband, the father, none of these people have intent to kill the baby. One of the necessary elements of a murder is you have to have intended or recklessly done something that you knew was calculated to cause murder, the death of that person. In a miscarriage, there is no such thing. So, you know, we don't believe in such nonsense. We're talking about when people, you know, put out a shingle on and commercially advertise, hey, come here, pay us money, we'll provide you with services to murder your baby. That's what we're trying to shut down. We don't want to have commercially advertised promoted abortions in our society. People also say, well, are you trying to outlaw, you know, every single substance that could potentially be used for abortion, like coat hangers or something? Of course not. You know, we're Republicans. We don't believe in outlawing guns. You know, we don't believe that the substance is the problem. It's how people use the thing, right? If we don't believe that guns are the problem, then we don't believe coat hangers are the problem. You know, you can use herbs for good, you can use herbs for ill. But the real question is, did you intentionally use that object to murder someone or not? We're not trying to outlaw substances. We're trying to outlaw the intent to murder things, people.
Another objection we're hearing is, well, wouldn't this allow for government spying? Right?
In the
like,
bedroom.
If we're going to end all abortion, well, then the government would have to make sure and you know, put cameras in people's homes, and like all these crazy objections, as if a personhood amendment would just completely obliterate every other constitutional freedom we have. And it would, right? You still have the constitutional right to privacy.
You still have the Bill of Rights. So under the Bill of Rights, you know, the Fourth Amendment, which we've spent a lot of time talking about today because President Donald Trump's Fourth Amendment right was violated when the FBI stormed into his house because they didn't have probable cause, they didn't have proper warrants and things. And it would be the same case with any other person, that they would have privacy. So unless an investigator had some reason to investigate you, they're not going to be, you know, spying on you. They're not going to be going through all of the mechanisms for a trial unless you are publicly promoting and advertising, yeah, I provide abortion services. That's when that would, you know, lead to them probably investigating you and having you shut down.
And I think some of us, and I think I previously thought this, that we thought we could end abortion completely. But the truth is, have we ended murder completely? Have we ended theft or human trafficking?
Just because we have laws against it.
We have laws against it, it still happens, but it's not going to happen near as much if you have laws against it. And you'll be able to criminalize and bring justice if someone does commit that crime. And so we have to realize that the problem with abortion is like anything else, it's depravity in the human heart.
Right.
And we really need salvation and redemption. We are not looking to the government to provide redemption or to fix every moral societal problem.
Right. There's a lot of problems that the government attempts to fix in our society today that they have no business trying to get involved in. God did not ordain them, He didn't design them to handle a lot of stuff. But Romans 13 does say that the civil government bears the sword. And what is the sword there for? unless it's to try to stop the bad guys from murdering, from stealing, from raping, and committing these types of violent crimes. So God has ordained the civil government with a very small jurisdictional role to stop crimes. And that's what they need to be focusing on, and not any of these other things. So I hope this is a helpful presentation. Was there anything else you wanted to add to wrap up,
Yeah,
Abby?
so just briefly, ways you can help. First, sign the petition. If you haven't already, grtlpetitions.online. You can go online, sign the petition. I have paper copies here. If you'd like to take a copy home, make copies circulated among your church and your business and your friends, we would appreciate that very much. Secondly, we're looking for other co-sponsors. So other organizations, other GOP organizations. We're looking for legislators. And we're keeping a list on the website of all the legislators that are supporting this effort. So if you guys could talk to the legislators up here in Northwest Georgia, that would be great. If they are pro-life, then surely they see the urgency of the issue and they would support a special session, right?
Yeah.
So if y'all can talk to them, and if they are supportive, let me know, send me an email, let us know so that we can put them up on the website as being a supportive legislator. We'd love to have Faith and Freedom Coalition join with us in that. Any other organizations like that, even local, right here on the local level?
Any one of you
Great.
can join that petition. We also have a lot of churches that have sponsored that petition. Abby's been involved in organizing rallies all over Georgia. We've had several up here in Northwest Georgia, in the 14th district. And it's been really neat to go to these events and see political elected officials standing right next to pastors of different denominations, and them all speaking with one voice and saying, abortion is murder and we need to fight against that evil in our culture. So you'll see a lot of those different groups on the website. We'd love to have your name added to that. Also, if you would click forward, please don't forget to come to our event on August the 18th. You can hear more about what's going on with the state Supreme Court and why last term was the best term, a lot of people are saying, in the United States history. And of course, if you'd like to join the GRA, you can go to our website, georgiara.com, and we'd love to have you join our efforts with the Republican Assembly.
One other thought, I know we have some county commissioners here in the room. We would love to have y'all sign on.
We've actually had some commissioners that have already signed
Like
on.
Ellsbury and Chattooga County has signed on. And we just launched an open letter to Marjorie Taylor Greene, urging her, because she has been such a vocal pro-life advocate, we're urging Marjorie Greene to join in. And you might say, well, the local level or the federal level, they don't really have anything to do with the state legislature. But they have influence. And it's your influence that we would love to have with this. If y'all come out publicly, there will be more people. And I know every one of y'all here have connections to probably represent 10 or 15 people that you know and that you're sharing this information with. And so if you guys could join in with this effort, every one of us have a circle, and we need every circle. We need to unite and come together in order to be able to end this. It's probably going to be an uphill battle all the way. There's lots of rhinos, and so we need to trust the Lord to help us. It very much feels like a David and Goliath situation here, and we may not see it happen, but we won't know unless we try. And so we would love to have you all try with us.
Amen. Thank you. Any questions for me at all? Yes, ma'am.
Have there been any statistics on the percentages of rape and incest? Abortions?
The last one I heard was like 1%, 2%.
That's a great point. They say that we have to have all these exceptions because of things like that. But if you look at the numbers of people that are actually being aborted, they don't involve rape and incest. Yet you open up that can of worms, and all kinds of things get through. Yeah.
Another thing, some statistics I have seen is that women, and of course rape is a tragic crime, right? Ought to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Mm-hmm.
But did you know that women who conceive in rape and have an abortion have higher depression, higher drug use, higher suicide rates than women who have conceived in rape and choose life for their baby? And I believe it's because they feel the guilt of being a perpetrator themselves against an innocent person. And so when they choose life, they sometimes actually experience healing by seeing something beautiful come from something so awful and traumatic. And so I think if we're a compassionate society, we want to not punish the baby for the crimes of the father. And if we love that woman, then she needs help, she needs healing, she needs counseling, but she doesn't need abortion because it's actually worse for her as well.
Yeah, doesn't help her to murder the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any
Great
other
question.
questions?
An exciting trend is that Latinos are, if you believe what we read, are switching the Republican Party en masse. Half of them are now identifying as Republican. So the question is, what response are you seeing from Hispanic churches on the issue?
Y'all have a lot of Latinos in this area, don't you? I've heard.
I think abortion is one of the reasons for
Yeah.
switching.
Yeah, I mean, strong family values, a lot of Catholics,
Big
are
families.
very, very pro-life. We did have a Hispanic pastor at one of our rallies for Georgians ending abortion. I haven't seen anything really huge, but I would love to make some connections. Like, if you have connections with churches here, I'd love to make those.
There was a young lady that showed up at one of our rallies who is bilingual and told us that there is an eagerness to reach out to the Hispanic community in this area specifically. And so if y'all would like for us to connect y'all with her to accomplish that, yeah, you're right, there's a great opportunity to reach out to the culture they have already. But I think a lot of their families are being Americanized, and so with that, they're starting to lose some of their family values in the Western materialistic culture we live in. So if we can reinforce what they have in their family legacy, there's a huge opportunity and opening there for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Diane.
Yeah,
We
we're blessed.
appreciate the opportunity.
Appreciate all of you.